We're going to start this puppy up. Clear? Prop.
And welcome back to Tip of the Week. Now last week we got the wings attached to the fuselage. This time we're going to work on the struts. And of course we need to get the wing lifted up to its proper dihedral. So let's get started. We need to create 4 steel wing attach fittings. These will be at the very bottom of our struts. This is made out of the 90 thousandths thick 4130 steel. Check your plans. And I got them 4 inches long, need 4 of them. And then here's just the stages I've gone through. This is our end result, is what we want. We're going to mark 3 holes. And if you look at the plans, 1/2 inch center to edge, and then 1 in the middle. And then using our grinding wheel, we round the corners. Now obviously these will be upsized to their final size after we get them in place, and then we'll take them off and paint them because they are steel. Okay, we've converted our flat stock into these 4 links now. With the corners rounded off, we want to pair them up and then drill one of the end holes all the way up to 1/4 inch. I'm going to match drill these, so I'm going to sandwich these together and drill through so that we get a nice straight hole. Same thing over here. You can pick one end or the other, but one end of each set of these needs to be opened up to 1/4 inch. I'm going to do that on my drill press. And here's what we end up with. Our next step is to take a piece of 1 1/4 inch diameter tubing and cut off 2 5-inch pieces. Now that we have our 5-inch pieces, we want to draw a center line on both sides, and then on one of the sides, 1/2 inch up, drill an 1/8 inch hole. And what we're going to do next then is to take one of our straps, cleco it in place, and then drill the other hole through our line. And there we have it. Now let's clamp on the other side and line everything up. And after clecoing one side on, I put the other side on with a clamp and send a bolt through the holes. The idea here is that we want everything lined up the best we can, and it just makes it easier if you have the bolt going through and a clamp, using our center line as a guide. But this way, when you drill the last 2 holes, you know that the entire fixture will come out just perfect. And long time ago, we built this solid rod, which is now going to become the end of our front wing strut. And this is where the attachment is going to be made. So now that we have this, we're going to use a 1/4 inch bolt through our fitting and into go. And this is where it's going to go. Now, we will build some bushings, spacers, to keep this from rattling back and forth and make a nice tight connection. And this, of course, will pivot to allow the strut, which will go inside. And then eventually, when we get the strut sized properly, we can drill all the way through the metal, the outer fitting, and then the inner fitting all the way through.
Our next objective is to create some struts that raise our wings to a 3 degrees for the dihedral. Now the question is, what is the easiest way to accurately raise each wing to 3 degrees, and how do we measure it? Well, there's actually 2 ways, depending on your equipment, to raise the wing the proper amount. Let's do the simple way that doesn't require any fancy levels or tools like that. The first step is to make sure that the fuselage frame is level, up and down. Now, I had to raise my wheel slightly on one side to get this level. So I did have to use a level to get the vertical section, and we're looking straight down the aircraft right now. We want that as perfectly up and down as we can, and using a bubble level is just fine.
Also be sure that the horizontal tube between the 2 wing spars is level before proceeding.
Another way to look at this is to throw a level on top of our main tube on top and shim up our wheels on the landing gear until that bubble is right in the middle. Now we know we have that piece level. Next, I'm going to tie a string around our main spar bracket up here. Just kind of looped it around. The idea is that I can pull a string and it's somewhere near the center to the bottom of the main spar and will allow me to come out towards the end of the wing. And if you have a cat around, don't let the string fall to the ground. You may not find it again. The idea is that we're going to pull this string taut along the spar, but we're going to hold it level. Now, how do we hold a string perfectly level? We use an inexpensive device like this. This has a bubble level inside, and it attaches very simply to a string. You simply connect it in there, and you can slide it anywhere you want. And as the string goes taut, you can carefully check and see the bubble inside, whether you have the string level. So watch what we're going to do with this. Here's the string, if it's easy enough to see, and I pulled it taut, and I can see the bubble in here. And what I want to do is move the string up or down until the string is level, and then measure between the strut bolt and the string, and I'm after 6 inches between the bolt and the string with a level bubble in here with the string taut. In other words, by raising and lowering the wing, we can get our 6 inches against a level string. And through the magic of trigonometry, we know that 6 inches here is 3 degrees at the distance from where we tied the string to this point, because we got a right angle here. And that's the way to set how high the wing should go until we get our 6 inches with a level string. The other way to create our 3 degrees dihedral is to use some high-tech digital level, the one that you can set and set it to 0. If you have a level like this, your vertical member does not have to be level, because the level can push a button and say, hey, that's my reference, that's level. So it makes it nicer to use a digital level, but the end result's going to be the same. Then once you've leveled it here, you can take it and transfer it and go for the 3.0 degrees, or as close as you can get it, raising and lowering the wing until you get your 3 degrees in there. So if you have one of these, it does make it easier, but you can also confirm it with the simple string method. Remember, the string method requires that you level the fuselage carefully. The digital level method does not require you to level the fuselage, because these guys can be set to 0 at any position with the punch of a button. If at all possible, it is best to support the wing while setting your dihedral at the cross member that is shared with the strut support. That's because if you support it further out or further in, there will be some bending of the spar, which will affect things when you go and measure and install your strut. So this way we're supporting the wing at the same place that the strut is going to be supporting it, and that way we get a little more accurate measurement by not involving any bending of the spar, because things are not super stiff up here. Also note that I'm supporting the cross member with a stiff piece of material, in this case a square tube, and that just helps keep things a little more solid, because we want the rear spar to also be at 3 degrees, and by supporting it lengthwise like this, we can keep some of the flex out of it. Nothing is super critical with these measurements. Just do the best you can and get as close to the objective as possible. Once you are happy with your 3 degrees, then our next job is to create a strut, the piece that will insert inside. So that'll be a 1 1/8 inch tube, which will go up all the way to the end here. So even with right there, and then all the way down to the fitting we just created, and it will go all the way down to the end here. So actually right now we can measure with a tape measure, and by cutting it maybe a little too long, we can then fit it, and we're going to take it off and we can trim it later. But that's the simplest way now, is to simply measure with a metal tape ruler. So I'm measuring from the very top of my fitting all the way down, and of course this needs to be held very taut, and then measuring to where the fitting ends down here. So in my case, the number of 99 gets me just a little past the fitting. And if I pull it even more taut, it goes a little beyond. So I'll probably cut mine to 99. Don't use my numbers with your construction, but just use them as a rough gauge for the ballpark, which is basically 8 foot 3 inches. I have labeled the fitting so that it'll go back on the same way. We're going to take this off and fit it to the end of our strut. And here's my 99-inch strut. And here's our fitting that I removed. Notice how that fits on very nicely. So I'll go ahead and remove these clecos and move this down to be even with here, and then I can re-drill and assemble this all back together with the clecos. And here we go with our fitting attached to our strut. You can see just a tiny bit peeking out down here. Let's go put this back and put the bolt in and see where the other end ends up. Now, let's go look at the other end. I removed the clecos out of here. And then, this will go on here. Now what we have to do is make sure we can match up the holes inside of here before we drill. And my length came out pretty good. We can adjust the strap to get it nice and straight by pushing as necessary. And then I'm going to carefully get this sleeve marked up with these holes. I can use a little pin, and then once they're set properly, then I can drill all the way through. And because everything has been match drilled, it's just a matter of pushing up, and everything should now go together very nicely. On both sides. Note that we have our strut in place. We have not ever removed our ladder support. So what's nice about this is our strut attachment did not alter in any way the height of the wing, so our 3 degrees has not been disturbed. So what we have left up here is to drill this all the way through with our, I believe, 1/4-inch bolts. We'll have to check our plans. And then down at the bottom, same thing. We need to drill these out to 1/4-inch bolts, I believe. We'll check the plans. Now, the only thing we haven't done yet is we're going to fill that bottom 5 inches with a filling. We'll cover that later, as well as up at the top. And this is for strength, reinforcement. We're going to fill this 5-inch section inside with a filler. And this is probably going to be the high-density plastic. We'll take a look at that later. But that can be done after we remove the struts, because remember, all of this has to be taken apart at some point to cover the wings, but we want to get all the hardware drilled and in place at this time. So that is our front strut. Now we move to the back, the rear strut. Take note that for an excellent fit, we want an ever so slight bend in our steel straps here. We do that by removing these straps with the clecos, putting in a vise, tightening down tightly, and then tapping just to bend these slightly, because our strut does not leave the mounting at a straight angle. There's just slightly off, and that will help prevent putting a bend on the strut to match up with the wing at the top. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we'll do the rear struts next time. And until then, everyone, back to building. And who said it was a good time to get back to building up in this part of the country?